Well, I hope you like what you've seen so far. I know we've thinned out a little bit, which is what we expect with this, but you will have opportunities to view all this material once the studies are finalised and we get this material on our website. I think, as Marty mentioned, you can track that on planokc.gov. We'll be working on this for the next couple of months, so it'll appear on an incremental basis, and then we'll get into the solid part of finalising the scenarios, as Terry talked about, in the early spring, and hopefully we can get the whole plan wrapped up by summer. That's our goal, at least, as long as you're all supportive. So let me go back a little bit. Terry did a really good job of explaining, I think, the purpose of the plan, and it really is very much about creating best value for us as a community. I think that was an excellent summary of the way we do that. And the whole plan is premised around that as a goal, about quality of life, about everything we're doing being sustainable and durable over time, and helping us to create the kind of community that everybody has expressed to us that they want. They want a healthy community, they want a community that they can move around a lot easier. They want a community with diversity of choice for a lot of different things. We've come a long way in a relatively short period of time, and it's hard to, sometimes people lose sight of how quick that transition is and where we came from. But everybody that I talk to, and I always do these little pop quizzes when I go to a restaurant and I ask the waiters and waitresses who are generally Generation Y, what they like about what's happened in the city or what they see happening in the city. And invariably, they all love what's going on, and they all want to respond according to the data that you saw today. They want to live in the downtown area, and they want to live in, they want to be able to walk to everything that's important to them. So anecdotally that bears out, but the statistics, when we develop the plan, we don't do it on the basis of anecdote, we do it on the basis of hard data and really solid research and analysis I mentioned earlier. And I think the presentations that you have seen today bear that out. This is outstanding information, really top quality presentations from really top quality firms in the country. So you're getting the best of the best in this whole process. And that's going to have an enormous beneficial effect on the final product that we deliver. When we, let's see where we're going to, what have I got up there? All right. As we move forward, the key point is trying to connect all of this information. It's a lot to pull together. That's the really hard part. And the growth scenarios analysis gives an understanding of how the city grows in a physical sense and how we're going to be able to respond to that in our fiscal capabilities. But we've got all those other elements in there that that Marty mentioned that we have not talked about today that also have to be woven into that. And with limited resources, if you squeeze in one area, Terry used the example of parks. If we don't have parks, then that gives us more money for something else, public safety. Maybe that's important to us. We may not need police if we don't have any parks. But this whole thing is about balance and trade-offs and trying to get the right mix. And that's what we're trying to head towards as we pull all this together with the public input from today and from all the other meetings that we've had in the past and from our understanding of what all those trends are, the trends that you've heard about today and the trends that we've researched outside of this, out of the scope of today's meeting, and pull all that together to create the roadmap for how we move forward in creating the city that you want. So that's really going to take some serious prioritization in how we develop the policies that are the implementation phase. So I know it's really hard to sort of stay at this higher level, and the comprehensive plan does not deal with that detail. What follows after this, when we finalise the plan, is there's a whole list of policies and actions and strategies in it. It's then the role of everybody, but primarily a lot of the departments within the city, the planning department, but all the other departments as well who are along with us on this journey in creating the plan, to then take those actions and strategies and convert those into their specific departmental budget, or changes to codes and regulations, or changes to operating policies. That's where the rubber hits the road in terms of where you see the plan implemented. So it's an ongoing exercise. And as we continue to adapt the plan over time, ensuring that it retains currency, then we will continue to work on ensuring that everything that we're doing is the highest priority. We've got limited staff resources, limited time, and limited money. So we have to ensure that everything we do, we get the biggest bang for the buck. So that's our motivation in how we construct the plan and how we keep it current. So ultimately, whatever preferred scenario we choose, we convert that into a land use plan. It's probably the strongest interface that people have with a comprehensive plan, because it sort of articulates in one single two-dimensional configuration. You put it down on a map, and that then tells you what's going to happen with the city in the future, and everybody makes decisions based on what they see with that map. We have to have something that people can refer to, because if it remains nebulous policy, then it's a little hard to interpret, and everybody interprets things differently. I know everybody in this room, if I ask you a question about any specific aspect of what you heard today, you're going to give me a different answer. So we've got to have something hard and concrete for people to be able to refer to make those decisions, and it's then our role, the City Council's role, the Planning Commission's role, and your role to make those interpretations in the best interest for yourselves and for the community as a whole. That's the hard thing for us. So it was Halloween last night, and just sort of referring back to that, and my previous career in noodling, and I had my hand in a hole at the bottom of the Oklahoma River at one point and pulled this chap out, and we did the DNA analysis and found a correlation with some guy called Jimmy Hoffa. Now, I'm not from here, but I think it has some resonance. But as like putting your hand in a hole when you don't know what is there may not be the smartest thing in the world to do. That's why we do planning. You have to know where you're going. So I went from the opposite of doing stupid things such as putting your hand in holes that contain large aquatic sharp-beaked animals to understanding where we are going. And everybody does planning. This is our profession, the role of city planning. But everybody does planning every day of their life, and you won't see a corporation out there that doesn't spend a lot of time on planning. The difficulty for us is when you're planning for an entire city, it's easy to plan if your corporate goal is to increase profits or to produce a particular product better than you did in the past or produce it quicker. But when you're producing a plan that involves all the different elements you've seen today, plus all the ones that we haven't talked about, that's difficult. But unless you do it, unless you know where you're going as a community, you won't have a chance of getting there. And that's the goal of this process. And it's really important that you participate in it and help us in defining what that future is going to be. Some of the really interesting things that I've heard, and I'm just going to sort of do a little synopsis and connection of some of the points that we've heard today, but the boomers, you know, we have a number of boomers in the room, and I'm one of those. But the Generation Y population is the same size. It's about, nationally, it's about 77 million. It was really interesting to hear Andrew talk about the fact that it's risen in our metropolitan area by 37%, well above the average elsewhere. That's a dramatic change in what's happening in the city. And we have to be able to respond to that. I know it's really nice for us as boomers to continue to try and plan the city that we're used to and the world that we're used to. But how would you feel if, as a Generation Y person, or a Gen Xer, or a millennial, to say, well, these people are planning a community that's not the community that I'm asking for? So I just want you to consider that as part of the process that we have to take into account as we move forward. We have to project what those people's expectations are for the future and include that in defining what the direction of the city is going forward. And that's difficult. As you heard, it's complex, it's hard to do, and you have to pull a lot of different things together. But that's what we have to at least strive to achieve. I'm speaking completely off script here, of course. So the implementation of the plan, this is obviously where the primary action is taken to ensure that this is what we're working towards. And in the past, the comprehensive plan has been developed by the planning department without a lot of collaboration with others. There's been community input, but there really hasn't been a connection across all the affected stakeholders anywhere near to the degree that we are doing with this process. So we spent a lot of time working with all the other departments because this is a plan for the entire city. And we want to roll in all the missions of the other departments into this process because they're affected. Whatever growth scenario we choose affects their business, the way they operate, the level of service they can provide, how much money they have to do their work, and how many staff that they can employ to be able to provide the services that the community is expecting. That's been a very different process, and I would say that all the departments have been very supportive of the planning process. We've also spent a lot more time interacting with the Planning Commission and the City Council, interacting with you as a community, and we want to continue to facilitate that, so we encourage you to remain connected either through direct contact or the other public engagement opportunities that we're going to provide in the spring when we start to talk about the growth scenarios. One of the things that hasn't occurred in the past is that the City Council having ownership of the plan. And we consider that to be really essential because while the comprehensive plan is a really important document for the Planning Commission because they're the ones on the front line of hearing the first round of zoning applications before it goes to City Council, and they're the one who reviews all the subdivisions, and that does not go to City Council. So they have a really enormous effect on how that physical growth of the city occurs. They're the ones on the front line of that. But all of these other factors in the plan, the quality of the neighbourhoods, the public safety, transportation, etc., that is more under the purview of the City Council. And their ownership of this document is going to be essential to the success of the plan going forward. So that's another thing that we're trying to do this time around. We really want to have that comprehensive ownership and that comprehensive buy-in to the plan so that we can adhere to it a lot better than we may have in the past because it's such an inclusive process to define where we want to go. The last thing you want to do is to throw that away by considering it only a guideline as such. It's much more than a guideline. It's very much a directional document. So the implementation framework and how we define that through the development of the plan is going to be absolutely essential. And I talked about the adaptation as well. So in closing on this, what I would ask is that as you think about how we move forward with this, everybody has a tendency to personalise their view of the world, and what I would say is that's definitely what we need for informing the plan. What is your worldview and how that guides the direction of the city? But beyond that, what you need to do is to understand, how does your neighbour feel about that? How do your children feel about it? How do your grandchildren feel about it? What kind of world are they looking for? That's the world that we're trying to shape. And I want you to think about that. Yes, it's a personal thing, but it's very much more of a community thing. And it comes back to that balancing out. What's good for me may not necessarily be good for somebody else. So pulling all that together to ensure that we're doing the best, providing the best value for everybody, I think is a critical thing. And we can do this. This can be a win-win for everybody. And I really appreciate everybody's participation with that.